who is joining, and just to give you a quick run through of how this session is going to work. John is going to take us through a lovely presentation, and then we will have time at the end of the session to run through a Q&A. So hope that sounds good. But yeah, very excited to have John on the call. Thank you so much. We are very lucky. Just to give all of you a little bit of background of John, he's not just your average advocate for the freelance revolution. He has an expansive 45 years of HR experience under his belt, including a PhD from the University of Toronto. He shared his wisdom with the best and the brightest at some of the most prominent business schools around. And if that's not impressive enough, he's been an active contributor on Forbes since 2018, as well as co-authored the book Agile Talent. So yeah, it's a real game changer in understanding how the workforce is evolving. And we are very lucky to have him as a partner and an advisor. And yeah, thank you for being here, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. I guess just one thing that I would say, if I may, and again, can we show people, can we bring people on, or is it just you and me?
I think Costa, give us an update in the chat there. It is better, more interactive. I don't know if people are, I don't know what time zones people are in, might be early morning for some of
all
you.
Kinds of stuff, sure. And some people may be recording, and that makes sense too.
That's
but
true.
While we're waiting, I'll give a little bit of an introduction to the stuff we're going to talk about. And Caitlin, just to be clear, I wish my mother were alive to hear that introduction. It would have pleased her so much. I don't know about the rest of you, but my mother used to ask me with some regularity, so what is it you do for a living again? And it was always fun, because how do you explain consulting, which was my career for many years, to somebody who's never been consulted to? It was just sort of a funny thing. So she eventually decided that her son was somebody who got paid for advice, and that sort of made sense to her. It's changed since then. And when we're ready, I'm going to show show the first slide, and we'll do that in a second. But well, you know what? Let's bring that up now. Let's share the screen.
Amazing.
There we go. Share. And I hope you guys don't mind. I'm going to do it this way.
That's fine.
So that it's a little easier for me to move things along. One comment that I'd like to make, and that is, you'll see me with a little guy there. That little guy is my youngest grandson. I should have explained, Supportwave colleagues, I am the oldest freelancer in the universe, without doubt, without absolute doubt. I was around when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And the idea that after all these years, I'm still a freelancer, and very much of a freelancer, it speaks to the fact that I'd rather not have a boss. I'd rather have colleagues. I'd rather have partners. I'd rather have associates. I'd rather have clients. I just have never done a very good job as somebody who had a boss. Let me give you a little bit of context around the picture, and that's Paxton Cole Younger, and he lives outside of Denver. And if the stats are accurate, he's going to end up being a freelancer too. And that's why I wanted to show. He's only a couple of years old now. That was him about 9 months. And he used to help me with my email when I would visit, and that was great. And more than 50% of the workforce will either be full-time or part-time freelancers. Now, that's a very interesting thing, and we'll show you a whole bunch of data around that. But I wanted you to keep that image, which is that, if I may put it this way, the pandemic, more than anything else, has shaken people out of their easy path. And it's caused a great many people to rethink their work, to rethink their career, and to rethink how they're going to apply that career. And one of the things that's happened, as you'll see, is that many more people are saying, I'd rather take my career in my own hands. I'd rather be a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, making my own living from my own bread than counting on a career with a larger organization. Now, we're in an interesting place because so many of you folks, if that's correct, are doing this part-time or doing this full-time, but you're doing it as independent contractors in many cases. And so the idea of sort of I own my own bread, I own my own living is an important one, I suspect, for many, many of you. With that in mind, let me show you some stuff. These are some stats that I just love to keep in mind. And there's a reason why some of that stuff is crossed off. It's not that I'm bad at PowerPoint. When I gave this presentation, or some of the pieces of this presentation in Copenhagen, Denmark, at the end of March, we thought that $2.5 trillion worth of global GDP was spent on, quote, contingent work. Turns out it was $4 trillion. And we had thought just a few years ago that it was 1.5. So it's growing very quickly. And if you add to that some of the other ways that you might think about freelancers, which is, for example, somebody that has 2 permanent part-time jobs is managing a portfolio, so to speak, then it even goes further up to about $5 trillion. $5 trillion spent on contingent work on us in 2022. Second is, we thought at the end of March that there had been growth of 60% more freelancers since the beginning of COVID. 2020 to 2023, we thought it was about 60%. Turns out, as I'll show you the numbers in a second, it's 90%. There's a huge trend, as I said before, towards kind of taking my career, taking my life in my own hands. I'd rather deal with it myself than give it to somebody else. And one of the ways in which that's played out is when people do choose to work for an organization, they're more likely to leave sooner. They're more likely to change more quickly because they see themselves not as employees in the way that my dad or your dad might have. They see themselves as renting their time and their expertise at work to an employer. And so there's a different employment contract being created here, folks. And it's very exciting for me. And you're at the forefront of that. The stuff that you're doing is absolutely mind-blowing in so many ways. Some more data points just for fun. About 800 to 1,000 platforms globally, about 200 in beta. I get about, I estimate different ways, but I probably get 7 or 8 emails a week from a company saying, we'd like to introduce ourselves. We'd like you to write about us. We'd like you to speak about us. We'd like your advice on some stuff. Wow. 200 companies, in addition to the 800 to 1,000, are still in beta. That is to say, they're still being created. They haven't served a customer. They haven't tried to raise money. They haven't put very much into practice. So this is robust. As the statement goes, the freelance revolution continues to grow and grow robustly. We're also seeing multi-billion-dollar services developing. It turns out, and I'll say this again, that there are probably 3 reasons why people choose not to freelance. This is data from Fiverr, but there's lots of data around. One is people are really uncomfortable with income volatility, the idea that I make a lot of money one week and no money the next. And that's our lot in life historically in freelancing. Second, people are worried about the loss of benefits, the idea that we're not getting health care, we're not getting education credits, we're not getting a paid vacation. And third, people are reluctant to join because they're afraid of loneliness, because there's not an office to go to or a meetup to be part of on a regular basis. You know, it's very tough for young people right now. Where do you go to find your friends? Where do you go to find a relationship? Used to be an easy thing, work and all of the ecosystem around work, the bar around work, the lunch place, all that stuff. Not anymore for many people. So on the one hand, we want to work from home, but we're really kind of nervous about loneliness. I mentioned these 3 because we'll touch on them again in a minute, but I wanted you to see the multi-billion-dollar services ecosystem that's developing. It turns out Credilink is one of the companies we work with, and they do a very nice job of providing what's called embedded credit. We can talk about that later if you're interested. But there's a multi-billion-dollar services ecosystem trying to deal with the benefits issue and trying to deal with what you would know as income smoothing. And we're actually involved in some experiments with US Bank and some other places that are trying to make that happen now. 2 or 3 more statistics. First is, we used to think it was 35% full-time freelancers, 65% side giggers, part-time or moonlighters, so to speak. Well, it turns out it's moving more and more in the direction of full-time, and you'll see those data in a minute. And we're seeing more and more activity where we're supporting as freelancers, not just other startups and scale-ups, but and small businesses, but we're supporting enterprise companies. I believe, and this is an unrequested advertisement, I believe that Supportwave is the best positioned company in the world to deal with the tech needs of large corporations that have lots of people working from home, lots of people hybrid, where there's no longer the requirement for big groups of centralized resources, but rather they need to be distributed. You guys are in the best position in the world. The only company that comes close is Best Buy with Geek Squad, but they're only dealing with the consumer side. They're stuck to the store. You guys can jump in there, Caitlin, for a second if you want to add something.
No, I'm just saying that's fine. Thanks, John.
Absolutely. 2 more points. One is, we have an extraordinary change in the workforce, and for many of you, this will be real, those of you who are part-time. 40% of the US workforce, and as much for the rest of the global workforce, at least in the developed countries of Europe and some in Latin America, 40% of the workforce is freelance light. What I mean is that they're moonlighting, they're working part-time as a freelancer, but they have a full-time job. And one of the biggest mistakes that big companies are making is not finding out who they are and tapping into their experience, tapping into their expertise, tapping into the fact that they understand entrepreneurship deeply. Finally, it's a tough life right now with freelancing. You know, it's tough to sort of keep the dough up high, but it turns out that almost 2/3 of freelancers are satisfied with their work and satisfied with their pay. Just hold on to that. People are making trade-offs. They're willing to take a little bit less to be their own boss, or to work part-time and make up the dough as a portfolio. Let me keep going. And I just want to show you just a couple of things here. It's just a very quick thing. This is US data. And what it says, again, from the previous page, there's been 91% growth in full-time freelancers. There's been 132% growth in what these data call occasional independents, which are really moonlighters, people that are doing moonlighting or working sort of on the weekends for another client, et cetera. And then the part-time independents are people that have 2 true part-time jobs or more than that. And so it's more traditional in a certain sense. But look at those numbers. The reality is that more and more people are saying, I'd rather do this myself. Next, I thought you'd get a kick out of some of these data. And the big message around these data is that things have changed for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. When I was working as a full-time consultant, I was a partner in a couple of firms, and then in between that, I'd be a freelancer and blah, 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 blah. And I already had a sort of a freelance mentality. That is to say, I'm renting my time. I'm not an employee in that sense. But take a look at these data, and what you'll see is some real change. The impact of word of mouth has gone down. Used to be that the way we found our work was from what people said about us. It's gone down by almost more than a third. Take a look at, on the other hand, by the same token, former employers, gone way down. What's come up is the internet. What's come up is social media. What's come up is online commerce marketplaces and independent business owner marketplaces like a Honeybook or a Wethos or a Collective. And what's gone way up is online talent marketplaces like Supportwave. So more and more people are counting on those online talent marketplaces. And in fact, what we've seen is that people have started to be even more engaged in those online talent marketplaces, hoping for more from their experience. And I'll show you what I mean by that. This is what people want from their marketplace, want from their freelance marketplace or platform like a Supportwave. The first thing that they want is they want interesting, attractive working clients. Duh, makes all the sense in the world. What they also want is a continuing flow of interesting, attractive work. Well, I'll give you an example of that. The example is Bluebirds is a Paris and Marrakesh, Morocco and France-based independent management consulting platform. And every Friday, the word goes out, these are the projects that we are now staffing. That makes people feel confident because they see that stuff and they say, wow, this is an organization that's really chugging along. This is an organization that has good relationships where we can find interesting, attractive work. It's worth investing in that platform because I think we're going to get back value. Third thing people want. I'll show you the data in a second, but one of the fun parts about freelancing is we love the craft and we hate the administration. Everybody will agree with that. We love the craft. We love doing what we do. We just hate all the business crap around it. And so please support me, platform, in managing that stuff. Not all the stuff, but help me in managing the parts of the business that I don't want to manage myself. And one of those, of course, is billing. Chasing clients is no fun. And there's lots more in terms of supporting me and manage my business. And I know that Supportwave is doing a lot more and planning a lot more in the areas of education, keeping people up to date, information that helps them to support their clients, etc. All of that is crucial. Fourth, what's your guess about the half-life of a software engineer, the half-life of his or her expertise or their expertise? And what you'll find is it's less than 5 years. So one of the things that freelancers understand far better than employees is I've got to keep up. I've got to future-proof my skills. Inevitably, what happens in big companies is we move from being technical and specialist to being more of a generalist, in many cases becoming a manager, et cetera, et cetera. And you need to know your stuff, but in a different way, at a different level. But I'm going to be an artisan. I'm a craftsman. I'm a well-paid plumber, not as quite well-paid as an electrician, but I'm somebody that enjoys the work of the work. And I need to stay up. And I want my platform, I want Supportwave to help me to remain employable, help me to remain in demand, help me to be the expert that more and more the market will need. And then finally, remember that message earlier, which was, it's lonely out there. Two kinds of loneliness. One kind of loneliness is just interpersonal relationships, love to talk to more people over the course of a day. But the other part of loneliness is, where do I get the new ideas? And so if I'm working from home, primarily if I'm working from home as an individual, man, I got to reach out to engage. But in order to do that, I need to be part of a network. I need to be part of a community. I need to be part of a team. And so one of the important things that Supportwave will be doing, I'm sure, in the future, is providing a more engaging, more active network, which keeps everybody not only feeling good and feeling connected, but feeling up to date. So it supports the future proofing. And remember what I said about help support me in managing my business? I thought you guys would get a kick out of looking at these data. These data are from the Global Study of Freelancers. I should have mentioned it before. 77 marketplaces over 30 countries. And it's pretty significant data. I promise you, I did it together with the University of Toronto, my alma mater, and we did a really, I think, an excellent job. This is how freelancers see their strengths and weaknesses, the top 7. Look at the 7 on the highest ratings. I got grit. I'm resilient. I'm creative. I'm flexible. I'm adaptable. I want accountability and responsibility. I meet my commitments, and I am values-based. I'm ethical, and I work well with people at all levels. And people say that with strength. Here are the areas where freelancers very often don't feel comfortable. I don't really like networking too much. That's uncomfortable. I don't want to be lonely, but the networking is hard for me. I never know what to say. I'm worried about taking risk, even though risk is essentially part of the business that we're all in. I'm sensitive to how I'm not really sensitive to how others perceive me. I should be more sensitive to doing that, because that's important in building client relationships and colleague relationships. And one of the things that we all have to do, whether you're in Supportwave as a tech, or you're an independent management consultant working with the C-suite, you're always building relationships with a view in mind to continuing and growing the business. The techs are the fundamental sales force of Supportwave. It's not the people in sales. It's not the business developers. It's not the marketing department. It's the people that are having contact with clients day in and day out. And at the end of the day, your company is going to be judged. A client is going to judge your company by the last experience they had with the tech. So very important. You guys are beloved, as you might say. Well, how else are you not all that happy? Well, you're not great at being persuasive. You don't always like to make business connections, and you don't truly like to negotiate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the message here is freelancers want the stuff on the right or your left to be handled by marketing, to be handled by sales, to be handled by my manager or my director or my area chief. But let me do the stuff on the left or your right. Let me show you how I can be creative. Let me be flexible and adaptable. Let me meet my commitments, etc. And I have the impression, though I don't know, I have the impression that that's an important part of the Supportwave plan, to take off the stuff from your lap that you don't want and to build the relationships that you do. Let me keep going. I don't know how many of you are new freelancers, but if you're not new freelancers, think about what your first year was like. Let me show you the data. People go through 4 stages in their early freelance career. Think about yourself as I do this and tell me whether this makes sense. First year sucks. Excuse me for saying it that clearly, but the reality is I don't know how to do it. I'm not being very successful. I get one client or another client. It's just really hard. So at the end of the first year, my question is, can I make it? Can I make it? Now, if I say I think I can, like the little engine, I think I can, then I move to stage 2, and that's 1 to 3 years. And look at the jump in how people feel about freelancing between the less than a year and 1 to 3 years. It's a huge jump. It's a jump of 50%. Those people that choose to remain in freelancing have figured out the system for them. They figured out what works for them, and they're bullish. They're optimistic about it at this point. Now, at about the 3-year mark, I've got another existential dilemma. I now know I can make it as a freelancer, but do I want to? It may be that my life has changed in some way. It may be that I'm exhausted. It may be that I'm not sure this is what I really want to do for the rest of my, whatever it is. But you see the drop again in how it becomes a less attractive career opportunity because we haven't figured out whether that's the right thing for me. And again, over the next year or 2, people make that decision. Some leave, some learn, some get excited. But look at the jump again at the 5 to 10 year and then 10 year plus. One of the things that Supportwave needs to do, but every platform needs to do it, is to be mindful of the challenge of the first year in particular, and to help people who are just getting started, not necessarily getting started with the tech, but getting started with the idea of being a part-time or full-time freelancer. There's some stuff that we need to help them with. And I won't go into greater depth around that, but I know that we've been talking to the folks, we've been talking to Caitlin and others, and they understand that as well as we do. But the notion is, it does take a village, as Hillary Clinton might say. In that first year, we've got a lot of stuff to do to make sure that people can get over the hump, feel confident, and be excited. I'm going to show you just a little more data, and we're going to do it pretty quickly. The message here is there are kind of 4 categories of freelancing. Tech, obviously, and that's where you sit. Marketing services, creative services, advertising, PR, et cetera, is a second major vertical. And the third is independent management consulting. Companies like Catalent or Talmix, or you've probably heard of lots of them. One other category that I didn't mention, it's not that important, and that is sort of everything else. So, for example, where do you put Spacely, which is in the business of providing freelancers to satellites and the space race, and working with NASA? Where do you put them? It's pretty cool. And one of the nice things about freelancing is we've got all of these sort of odd, interesting little niches that we cover that are kind of fun. So think about the top 3, and here's the big message, and that is, among these top 3 categories of freelancing, tech, you won by like a big margin. So the question is, as you look at your experience, it's worth thinking for a minute, do the percentages describe you? Are you feeling like it's an attractive career opportunity? Are you feeling like you're building expertise in interesting areas? Are you feeling like you're enjoying the quality of life you hope for, that you're achieving your financial goals, et cetera? It's interesting to see this from an overall perspective, but the other perspective to see it in is, am I getting what I want out of it? And if you're not getting what you want out of it, maybe you can. Maybe it's not a case of leaving this platform to go to somewhere else, but maybe it's a case of you just haven't thought long and hard enough about how to make it for yourself. And at the end of the day, all of this is a combination of the marketplace, but also us individually. So the message there is, in general, people on the tech side and freelancing are feeling pretty good about their work, their relationships, their career, etc. If you're not, start thinking about why. Next. This is the fun part as well. So we talked about it, what you think about your experience of freelancing and implicitly the platform, but this is how folks see their clients. And again, the message is tech wins. Tech wins because it's the most established. Tech wins because it's the clearest in terms of return on investment, or clearest in terms of the practicality of, did you help? At the end of the day, there's an important difference between being an electrician and being a plumber. If you're an electrician, it either works or it doesn't. If you're a plumber, it might work, but it might be flooding your house at the same time. We get the privilege of being more like the electricians. That's great feedback for us. And it also says that clients can be more experienced, more expert, more confident of that stuff. I want you to just, again, take a look at 2 data points that I thought were interesting, and it's an area where Supportwave needs to help. One is, the lowest 2 numbers are the 2 that in some respects are the most important for you. First is, does the client know how to work effectively with freelancers? And even in tech, the answer is 50-50. Half of the experiences are, they really don't know how to do that. They want to treat me like employees, or they want to treat me like blue collar, task rabbit kinds of guys. They don't get it. They don't understand that I'm I'm a solopreneur. I'm a business person providing service to another business person. And so we have a challenge in terms of training and teaching folks how to do that. Second thing is, in those areas where you're working with a project manager or a specific manager in an organization, again, the message is only about 50%, say client project managers or client managers in general, know how to work well with freelancers. The other half says, well, they kind of treat me like we're employees. They send me emails all the day and the night. They call me up in the evening. Wait a second, this isn't the way it's supposed to work. I am renting my time to them. I'm not an employee. So those are the two areas where platforms can really help by simply making sure that clients know how to work well with freelancers. Let's keep going. This is just a minute of statement, and I'm going to show you one more, and then we're going to be done. Private talent clouds. One of the things that's happening that's really interesting is that companies are trying to disrupt the disruptors. So you're a disruptor. You know, there are 780,000 tech service organizations of various sizes in the US. You compete with 780,000 of these guys, depending on where you are, if you're in the US. Well, you know, in a sense, what's happening here is that companies are saying, maybe if we bundle freelancers, maybe if we bring them onto our platform as a private talent cloud, we don't have to pay the cost of the company that delivers them, whether it's Supportwave or it's TopTal or it's Malt or it's any organization. So there's going to be this is going to be interesting for a while, because we're not going to know kind of how it works out for a while. But what we know is that HR and procurement organizations increasingly are building these private talent clouds that bring together the resources that they want on an ongoing basis, that they source directly rather than going through a marketplace. What we know is that so far, they don't really know how to do this very well. So that's going to give you some time. But the reality is they're going to figure it out. And at the point at which they figure it out, or as they figure it out, you ought to be thinking about how you partner with them, because they're going to be a force, they're going to be a player. And rather than, just letting them take some of your market, the opportunity for you is to become a participant, become a player with them, provide service and provide talent through them. And, you know, I'll read you just this last statement, which is HR pros expect their firms to increase their use of private talent clouds. 77 expect to increase it over the next 18 months. This is not something that you dismiss. This is something that you pay attention to. Last, I've jumped over one slide because I don't think you're all that interested in freelancing currently in Africa and the Middle East, but we can talk about that another time if you'd like. I want you to take away one message from this slide, and that is, what a wonderful industry this is from the perspective of innovation. We're watching an industry be created in real time. Now that can be really exciting in some days. It can be really scary in other days. It can be really frustrating in other days still. But the reality is, in so many of these areas, what we're seeing is really, really cool stuff. So if I were to talk about you guys as an innovator within the revolution, as opposed to this specific page, what I'd say is, and I was very excited to work with Caitlin and Kelvin and the rest of the group in sort of figuring out together that there was this absolutely wonderful opportunity, right? Which is enterprise local, as we talked about at the beginning of this, for which you are uniquely positioned. And what a cool thing that there was a company that was ready when COVID blew up the world. And that as the world started to get put back together, and as working from home and full-time remote and heavy hybrid all became factors in the US and elsewhere, that you guys had a had a program and a platform that fit perfectly with that need. Now you got a lot of work to do to fully own your potential, and do not screw it up, because what you're doing is too important to screw it up. And with that, I am delighted to stop sharing. And hello.
That was incredible. Thank you, John. I really enjoyed that. And I hope those who are listening enjoyed it too. And if anything resonated with you, please let us know. I think we're going to open the Q&A if anyone has any questions on that. Let's see. So I think the chat is disabled, but if you run through the Q&A, we will read them out loud and answer your questions.
So advice on how to market yourself as a freelancer. And that's from Nicole. Nicole, let's talk about it right now. There's sort of three pieces that are really important, if I may say so. One of the things that we did with Supportwave early in our relationship is we had a workshop. It was called Storylines, right? And what we tried to do in that workshop, and I think it was pretty successful, was to say, what do we really want people to know about Supportwave? What's the essence of Supportwave? What's the core story that makes your presence important? And then let's talk about how that turns into sort of great little vignettes of how it's played out. The company that we saved, the company that we enabled them to get into a new business, the company that was able to double their staff because of the work that we had done. Whatever those are, one of the things, Nicole, that I would suggest for you and others is, what's your story? What's the work? What's what is the thing about you, the contribution that you make and how you make it, that makes you essential to the world? And if you got that, start telling that story. You know, one of the things that I'm always impressed by is the activity of people on a medium. I don't do Twitter anymore because the guy's too crazy. But I love, I love LinkedIn. TikTok has been important for many people. I know Instagram is important for people, etc. So one of the things that you got to do is get the word out. Make yourself famous. Now you can. What's stopping you is you don't know what you're famous for. And that's how we get back to the initial piece, which is, what is the essential contribution and how you make it in the world that makes you absolutely unique and essential?
Yeah, that's great advice, John. And that kind of ties back into your earlier stats with how are people finding freelancers or freelance jobs? And that's what, 40% social media.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's social media, and and just to repeat it, there's been such a, people see platforms as a unique opportunity to meet their psychological needs, as well as their administrative needs, as well as their business needs. So now the question is, and this is an important one, Caitlin, has the platform, and I don't think this is the case for you guys, but I think as you grow, you're going to have this challenge again and again. Are you earning the loyalty of the techs? Are you earning the loyalty of the techs? And that comes back to what they want from their platform and your ability to provide that value. I think you are now, but your challenge is, how do you keep doing it? Right?
That's always a work in progress, for sure.
It's always a work in progress. Exactly right. So anonymous attendee, hi anonymous, said, how do employees get benefits that employed people get? So here's what's happening. The answer is, it's provided through partnerships. It's provided through a partnership with a fintech that offers services like income smoothing, right? And typically what happens, I'll give you sort of a general thing, but I don't know what you're going to do with you. But one of those, excuse me. Be right back.
No worries. I can finish.
Oh, no, we're good. It's somebody calling from the from downstairs. So one of the things that good, sorry.
Right.
So one of the things that many companies are doing, they're working with a company. We can use many examples that excuse me, provides based on your past track record. They provide income smoothing, essentially a loan, but at a very attractive level. But it depends on your history as a producer. That's one area. You can certainly buy other sorts of things. And what we're seeing is more and more platforms are providing those services. In some of the cases, it's provided for free. In other cases, it's provided at a cost, but they're giving you the benefit of the group rate.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think, Anonymous, that the Supportwave also wants to answer that question.
No, I was just going to say, it's definitely conversations that the team has been having with providers. It's a bit tricky in terms because we are global, trying to get the same cover and benefits for all the techs in the UK, US, Europe, South Africa, wherever you may be. It's a bit tricky navigating that, but it's 100% on our radar and something that we always working to.
Cool. Any other questions? Any questions, Caitlin, that you had that in mind that people might have asked for previously?
I think you hit the nail on the head for most of them, John. Anyone else want to ask any more questions? Feel free to put them on the Q&A.
As we wait, one more statement that I'd like to make, and that is, I want you to think long and hard about whether you're full-time as a freelancer with Supportwave or whether you're not. What I'd invite you to keep in mind is one thing overall, and that is there has to be balance in the economic relationship between a platform and the individuals on the platform. And what that means is that the platform will work as hard as possible for obvious reasons to provide work to as many folks as possible. But you know, there's another side to that, which is your ability as techs to maintain and keep and grow those client relationships through the quality of your work and the quality of your relationships. That's a really big deal. You know, the data says that if I do something really good for a client, three other clients are hear about it in one way or another. It also turns out that if I do something really bad, if I screw up, and especially if I screw up and I'm not a responsible person, the 10 clients hear about that. So the message around this stuff is more than anything saying, you guys, you are part of the sales process. You're a part of the marketing process of your organization. Your ability to build strong relationships with your clients and to provide great service to your clients is extraordinary in terms of not only your individual success, but also the success of the company. And that is the message that I hope people take away, whether they're on your platform or any other platform, that it's a contract, it's a partnership.
Yeah.
It's not me waiting to hear from you alone.
Yeah, that's a great point, and thanks for that, John.
So we've got one from Kelvin, which says, I totally agree that our IT experts are our best sales force. Do you think referrals work to entice freelancers, to incentivize freelancers? You know, I think there's lots of experiments going on around that, Kelvin, and it's a great question. And there's always value in providing people with one or another kind of a bonus, whatever you want to call it, whether it's a referral that's contractual or whether it's a bonus in general, for being a great contributor to the organization. I think that makes all the sense in the world. And I think there are also other ways that you can recognize and support it. For example, one of the things that IBM used to do a long time ago, long time ago, Remember, I'm a dinosaur. So long time ago, is they used to take their best salespeople, and they used to make them sales training managers, because they were able to really share with young or new or just starting sales managers how to do the better job. The second thing they did, which was so important, is that they really celebrated those roles. So imagine that there's wonderful techs around the world that have really shown that they're able to do a great job. Some of them might love to spend part of their time training some others, make that available to them. Some of them might enjoy speaking on behalf of the company and have an articulate way of doing that. That makes sense too. So I would say that it's kind of like Burger King, have it your way. And while on the one hand, some sort of a reward for contributing to the business is always fair, that there are many ways to do that, not all of which are mechanical, not all of which are financial. But I love, Kelvin, what you're thinking of around that. Did you want to add anything, or Caitlin, did you want to add anything around that before we move to the next question?
No, I think that's great. Great ideas.
Okay. Vincent Cromwell has asked, will being a freelancer differ from a contractor? You know that you're absolutely right, Vincent. We use language too interchangeably. That one of the differences between contractors and freelancers is that contractors, at least originally, used to have contracts, and freelancers may not. So it may be different in the sense that as a contractor, I'm doing 10 hours of work each week, or 20 hours of work, or whatever, for a given client, where freelancers may be working for 10 or 11 different clients over that same period, because they are free of specific contracts. So I think that's probably the difference, but we're lazy sometimes, and I apologize for that sort of intellectual laziness when we equate the two, because they're not always the same.
Nice.
Have I exhausted all of you?
Any other questions? Now's your chance.
I have one question, and that is from folks: would you like to do this again in a year or 6 months or something like that? Is there value in getting together to have these kinds of conversations as well?
Absolutely, I think so. The chat's disabled, so can you guys give us a thumbs up? Do we want? Oh, everyone's saying yes.
And I'll answer one more question
from Nikolai. Nikolai, is that correct?
Yes. So one more question for Nikolai, which is, how do you see the future of corporate company employment in the next 10 years? Well, here's the data point, which is, I think, so interesting. I asked PwC and Deloitte. I didn't ask EY, I didn't ask KPMG, but I knew those two. So I just asked PwC and Deloitte, what percentage of your workforce will likely be freelance in the next 5 years? And they said a third. Now, it makes sense. You know, they hire, what, 80,000 people a year? They're going to cut it back to about 60, 50, 60. And they're going to use those recs, so to speak, or those spaces to bring in experts in various areas that they wouldn't have had internally. So they won't use them, you know, in the same full-time way, but they'll be part of, as we said before, a private talent cloud, and they'll be put on different assignments to do that stuff. So I think what we're going to see across the board, Nikolai, is more of a flexible, blended, agile workforce. I think it's a different architecture, not only because it's good for companies, but because people want it. So I think that's the answer. Well, if I'm smart, I'm gonna get going before people are sick of me.
No, that was amazing. Thank you, John. And Thank you everyone for joining. I think it's so important to have these conversations with people like John, with our techs, and as a platform as well. So yeah, that's it. Let's just keep the communication open, and thank you for all your time. Thanks, John. Bye, guys.
Guys, thank you. Thanks,
Good to see you.
Caitlin. Thanks, Kelvin. See you
Bye, guys.
guys.